They softly start and then they build up. Then they build up. When they build up, that time also you find the modulation. You find that the pace is not the same. Sometimes pace is very fast. It is not only the pace, all those things. Pace, pause, pitch, emphasis on the keyword, 100 years later. And the tone. Now here the tone is evidently Hitler is motivating. He is also motivating. But here the purpose is slightly different, that of the Hitler. Hitler is motivating for war. Here he is motivating for democratic rights. So slight difference is there. So anyone wants to comment?
407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground.
The use of repetition by all the leaders is very important. Just as he says, just as Martin Luther says, now is the time. Obama, similarly, he said, yes, we can. See, all these, let me tell you, they have origins from literature. Many of the Shakespearean plays, the first point is taken from there and speech is developed. And it's such a fine art, and anybody can do it. You need focus, you need desire, you need hobby, you need to enjoy making a speech. So the few speeches I have, and one which I had asked my secretary, she didn't put, is that of, those are not speeches, but monologues. So monologues, because she thought it is dramatic, and but they are very good modulation exercises. We have put it on the on YouTube. Maybe when I send you emails, I can send you a link, and I'll show you. I remember that, so I'll just perform that so that you know. So modulation, bringing in variance in pace, pause, pitch, emphasis on the keyword and the tone. Second, for leader, public speaking is most important. Any person who is not a good public speaker can hardly be a good leader. Yeah, and then he should have a vision. He should share his vision. He should tell his people how to follow the vision. So those are also the qualities of the leader, and he can hold. Yes, now we play.
Struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Okay, the vision, share. As we were discussing, we are individuals. Some conflicts among the team members are bound to be there. So it is the leader's job to balance that. It's the leader's job to balance that conflict. It's very important, because otherwise that will grow, the efficiency will suffer, the productivity will suffer. Yes, now we can play.
ये आश्चर्य है कि परमाणु परीक्षण की भी आलोचना की गई। देश के सामने कौन सा खतरा था? मैं 1974 में सदन में था, जब श्रीमती इंदिरा गांधी के नेतृत्व में परमाणु परीक्षण किया गया था। हमने उसका स्वागत किया था, प्रतिपक्ष में थे फिर भी स्वागत किया था, क्योंकि देश की रक्षा के लिए किया गया था।
Emphasis on the key word.
उस समय कौन सा खतरा था? क्या आत्मरक्षा की तैयारी तभी होगी जब खतरा होगा?
Logic, content is very good.
तैयारी पहले से हो तो जो खतरा अगर आने वाला है तो खतरा भी दूर हो जाएगा। खतरा अमल में नहीं आएगा। और इसीलिए हमने परमाणु परीक्षण करने का फैसला किया। हमारे कार्यक्रम काल में उसमें लिखा हुआ है, कोई छुपी हुई बात नहीं थी, कोई रहस्य नहीं था। अध्यक्ष महोदय, परमाणु परीक्षण के बारे में श्री चंद्रशेखर जी ने कुछ विचार व्यक्त किए। मुझे खेद है कि मैं उनके विचारों से सहमत नहीं हो सकता। उनके चिंतन की एक विशिष्ट धारा है। लेकिन 50 साल का हमारा अनुभव क्या बताता है? क्या रक्षा के मामले में हमें आत्मनिर्भर नहीं होना चाहिए? केवल एक पड़ोसी नहीं, हमारे अनेक पड़ोसी हैं। इस समय यूरोप में क्या हो रहा है वो एक चेतावनी है। पोखरण 2 कोई आत्मश्लाघा के लिए नहीं था, कोई पुरुषार्थ के प्रकटीकरण के लिए नहीं था, लेकिन हमारी नीति है। और मैं समझता हूं ये देश की नीति रही है कि मिनिमम डिटरेंट होना चाहिए। वो क्रेडिबल भी होना चाहिए। इसलिए परीक्षण का फैसला किया गया। उसके कारण कुछ कठिनाई आएंगी, हमें मालूम था, लेकिन देश उन कठिनाइयों का सफलतापूर्वक सामना करेगा, यह भी हमको विश्वास था। और ऐसा ही हुआ। आर्थिक प्रतिबंध हमें आगे बढ़ने से नहीं रोक सके। रक्षा संबंधी फैसले करने से हमें विरत नहीं कर सकते।
Okay. See, now we but replete with meaning, and his longer pauses enable us to think, assimilate those meanings which he doesn't speak, but which are only intents. Yeah?
Continue.
No, 1 minute. So, what we are talking about the leader, he must have vision, he must disseminate the vision, he must tell his followers how to follow the vision, and balance, which Vajpayee, poor fellow, entire time he was balancing the differences among BJP. But that is his job. That's his job. Whereas our present leader, tell me what comes to your mind. Yes. What is the difference between Modi and Vajpayee?
Modi is in a much more commanding position
and much more powerful position. So he can afford to have develop different kind of leadership.
Two personalities.
I think Modi is more aggressive and more
More Hitler-like. Yes.
To an extent. But here I would like to share one Atal Bihari Vajpayee's speaking style. So once he was delivering a speech, and then he said that Desh takdeer ke tirhaye pe khada hai. Then after that speech, people asked, it's usually Choraya, crossroad, why this tiraha? It was not rhyming, takdeer and Choraha, so I said takdeer ke tirhaye pe.
Because he's a poet.
Gujarat, and he want to take out that model, and he have a desire actually to change the India, to change a opinion about India over the international vision. So he wanted to make those changes in the India, and he will always like say to the Sansad ki this is what we need to, because we get the majority this time, so we have to have perform. And how we can do, he just trying to portray that through his conversation and through whatever he is doing.
Another difference was Modi always evokes strong emotion. Either people are totally supportive of him or they are totally against it. But Atal Bihari was cutting across the line. He has one friend. Like when he was the Prime Minister, and I think around Pokhran too. So America was threatening something, and he wanted that he once admitted to that his close circle. I am grateful that I get a call from US President about something to do with. Then he called Mr. Surjit and the communist people. They were naturally anti-Americans. Then he said, "Are you against America?" He said, "Yes, but I don't hear any protest." So certainly he was trying to suggest that you raise your speech so that I get an excuse that there is people are against this thing, so I can't take decisions. So such kind of subtlety was his formula.
Yes.
One thing about Modi is he does his homework really well. He kind of, if you listen to his speeches, whether he's doing it in the north or in the south, they will relate to the ground reality. He will actually pick up an issue that is close to the masses. He does his homework, he understands, and he'll bring in local flavor. If he's talking about Bihar, he'll say that what the Biharis want. He'll actually literally use the words that people are able to connect to. So he will keep the people engaged in his speech.
Yes.
So probably Atal Bihari Vajpayee was good. It would very well come out as that he is a poet when he's making a speech. Whereas when you're listening to Modi, you will be able to tell that he's a leader. That's one of the subtle difference you can tell in both the speeches.
Very true. There was a tweet that we have two mothers. So which are the two sons?
Very well understood.
Yes. Okay. Now, traits of a strong leader. Good communication. We have seen without good communication, the leadership is not possible. So that is why we are here. Confidence. Hesitation, that's why since yesterday we have been talking, be confident. So what if you are wrong? That's your opinion. And then never argue to the extent of, no, don't try to win. But express your opinion in a very logical, very effective fashion. And if you can't influence, you say, okay, we agree to disagree. Where's the harm? Then, commitment. Commitment we have seen in all, whatever we have seen, the leaders, they absolutely appear committed to what their goal is. Commitment is very necessary. Commitment is very necessary for every leader in the business organization. Commitment. Creativity. Now, can you name one leader whom we can all agree that he is the real creative man? Yes? Business leader.
Steve Jobs.
What? Steve Jobs, yes, absolutely. Steve Jobs, he is a leader, but you know, he had a circle of only 5 to 6 people. In his organization, 7th man he would not know. He was a very different kind of out of the box leader. But we can't say he was not a leader. The way he rose. Now we'll see this speech I'll like to watch.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with you today for your commencement from one of the finest universities. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why did I drop out? It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. And 17 years later, I did go to college. But I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all of the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. and we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees.